Thank you very much. Thank you for attending the seminar. The title of the paper, because this is a paper we just prepared and we submitted to the Journal of Business Research, and I wanted to share with you, the paper, and I would like to put a special emphasis on the methodology because I think it has a lot of possibilities to apply in other areas. The title is Combining ESG Ratings and Media Content for a Better Understanding of Corporate Ethics and Artificial Intelligence Perspective. The authors are me, Dolores Lagoa, coming from the University of A Coruña, and my colleagues Paula from the University of Burgos. It's a city quite near to Madrid, about 1 or 2 hours. Just to know, I'm coming from the University of La Coruña. I'm here Minus University for a research stay. I was here 10 years ago, and then I was very happy, so I came again. I work at the Faculty of Economics of Business at the University of La Coruña in Galicia, the north of Spain. Before joining to the University of La Coruña, I worked in different private companies as a consultant in several projects. And now I teach financial operations, investment theory, and financial valuation. This one in the Master of Banking and Finance. And at the same time, since May 2020, a critical day, as you can see, I have the position of coordinator of the Master in Banking and Finance in my faculty. My colleague from the University of Burgos has made a master's degree in business intelligence and big data. So as I know the empirical part of the paper, she was the one who managed how to work with the models, with Python. So in case you want to know details about the empirical part, I can contact her. Just the introduction, the review literature, data and methodology, results and conclusions. I have no problem if you want to stop me in case you don't follow me, or the part of the methodology, the empirical part probably is a bit technical, but I will try to do my best just to explain the whole idea without giving too many details about it, okay? As you know, ESG is a very popular topic. In general, the companies try to show they apply and they implement business, sustainable practice, and they act as good companies. And in general, more and more people understand that this business practice, when they are good from a sustainable point of view, are not only important from an ethical point of view, but also are essential for creating long-term value. In the last years, we could appreciate that ESG is becoming more and more important. So we could perceive that there is an increase in the number of researchers, the number of methods, and the number of academic publications. And ESG matters for investors, governments, stakeholders. So the researchers try to work on it and trying to do a lot of studies on this topic. Although responsible business practice are receiving more attention, we could perceive that on the other side, companies still struggle with controversies surrounding their ESG efforts. These controversies are disputes, according to the define provided by Henry in 2004, disputes, disagreements, allegations of wrongdoing, ethical lapses, involving a company's operations, products, service, and in general, they attract significant public attention, stakeholder concerns, and often regulatory scrutinies. There are several types of controversies. According to the ESGC score, which is the one we are going to use as reference for the paper, published by Thomson & Reuters. We have business controversies, environmental controversies, social controversies, governance controversies. In general, we are going to focus on business controversies, which are conflicts or scandals where a company is criticized for unethical, illegal, or irresponsible behaviors. I will explain later why we are going to focus on this type of controversies. We consider business ethics controversies are a very interesting category because I will explain this later. They are more transversal, and we have different examples are political contributions, bribery, corruption, conflicts of interest, tax fraud, parallel imports, money laundering. To understand the controversies in general, researchers often rely on stakeholder theory and legitimacy theory, both of which highlight the critical role of public perception in determining corporate behavior and strategy. Business ethics controversies impact reputation, stakeholder trust, and market performance, highlighting the crucial need for early detection and analysis. To measure a company's performance, we have the ESG scores. These scores are developed by specialized rating agencies such as MSCI, Sustainability, Refinitiv Econ, Bloomberg, etc. In general, they assign scores across the three pillars of ESG performance. And as a complement to the overall scores, you can see here the different scores we have provided by Thomson Reuters. We are going to focus on ESG controversy scores. Some providers calculate this score, and they are numerical indicators used to know how much a company is implicated in controversial ESG issues. I mean, they try to represent the extent of a company's involvement in controversies. In the case of Econ's methodology, they calculate 23 ESG controversy topics, ranging from 0 to 100. This is the scale, where 0 is the worst score, meaning that many controversies related to that topic were identified during the period, or in some cases, we can have companies that really they had controversies, but they knew how to manage the situation. So probably they have a good score, even they had controversies. And 100, the best score, meaning that no controversies were detected during the period. But a priori, I mean, the initial idea, or at a first glance, the scores are based on data and look neutral, but they have several drawbacks and concerns. One of them is that the rating agency use different methods and data sources, so we can appreciate difference in the ESG scores. So as this author indicates, this can lead to significant variations in scores for the same company across different providers, making it difficult for investors to compare and interpret the results. And at the same time, we can see that in some cases, there is some subjectivity of certain ESG criteria, because the companies want to exaggerate their credentials just to do, even to show they do very good practice, so they are not very objective, and greenwashing at the same time. So we propose a systematic comparison of ESG controversies scores and news media content for large European companies. And our idea is to identify ethical controversies and just to see if these ratings are transparent and are objective, and if we can find some discrepancy of difference between them. just the literal review. I'm not going to check all the papers because it can be a bit intense. I'm just going to focus on those that I think are most significant. As you can see, the papers about these topics are very recent papers. So this is something positive because when you send a paper to a journal, I think it's a crucial aspect just to work on something that they consider innovative. Anyway, I will tell you when I have the answer about the submission of this paper, because at this moment it's in the review process. So I don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, I'm going to just to check some papers in which they make reference to the aspect I was talking about. One promising avenue is the application of advanced data analytic techniques to analyze the ESG-related insights from textual sources. So what we call in machine learning natural language processing. And it's an interesting, in this case, I will tell later, but I'm going to talk about the sentiment analysis and the topic modeling. So these techniques can be interesting tools for analyzing textual sources and textual information from different sources. I'm going to review the key papers in the order they were published. For example, we can see how all 3 years ago, in 2022, they found discrepancies between sentiment analysis. This is one of the methods I'm going to use in the paper, of news articles, and company reported ESG, environment, social, and governance performance. And they speak in the paper about possible overstatements or greenwashing. These cases where companies exaggerate the positive image of their sustainability practice. Later, Mandas and all, in this paper, they use both methods, sentiment analysis and topic modeling. They discovered that companies with ethical behavior and clear communication get better ESG scores, while those with bad practice are rated lower. And the last year, Biller and Conrad, they indicate that real-time news shows clear and up-to-date information about how companies are doing with sustainability. And they consider it's a hateful addiction to regular ESG ratings. And in this case, we are going to focus on the technique of sentiment analysis, and just to check some papers where they use this technique and the results or the conclusions they obtain. So it has been very popular in recent years, the use of social media analytics to analyze the media content. So Nemathed et al. In 2019 used the sentiment analysis, and they consider it helps monitor controversy and events by using Twitter data. And then they found some inconsistencies and debates within online conversations. But in 2022, indicate that when sentiment analysis is used along with market data, it shows that people react badly when companies say they support ESG, but the public doesn't believe them. Park et al. 3 years ago indicate that when a company does something wrong, social media shows how the public feels and can push the company to fix things fast. According to the topic modeling papers, we couldn't find a lot of them using this technique just to analyze our topics. And Park et al. Is the same paper I was talking about because they use both sentiment analysis and topic modeling. They use topic modeling to analyze ESG reports. Topic modeling, a topic is defined as a cluster of words that tend to appear together in similar contexts. So it's very interesting to use the topic model and the sentiment analysis, but we could appreciate that is a very interesting. It's very interesting to use both together. I mean, a dual application of topic modeling and sentiment analysis. Anyway, we could find much more papers using sentiment analysis compared to topic modeling papers. So, in the case of the dual application, in which we use topic modeling with sentiment analysis, we can find these papers. We talk about them. Park and Liu et al. They both emphasize the synergy of combining topic modeling with sentiment analysis. And in the case of Liu et al., they indicate that they offer a more complete view because they combine thematical and emotional aspects of controversies. And the other authors, for example, pseudo algorithm, we can find there a discussion of ethical aspects and political controversies. So, in light of the review literature, we could appreciate our limited number of studies comparing ESG scores from rating agencies with ESG-related information. So we consider there was a gap there in which the combination of sentiment analysis and topic modeling could answer the question you have there, no? How business ethical controversies are reflected in real-world news narratives. So in our analysis, we try to compare numerical data, ESG scores, with subjective textual information found on social media. According to Mandas et al., it indicates this dual analysis is particularly valuable for studying controversies as it captures both the content and tone of media narrative. So I'm going to explain now the process, how we try to solve this question, to answer this question. And this is the empirical part of the paper. To implement the empirical part of the paper, we follow the methodology of the work, follows the 5 states sentiment and media analysis framework proposed by Liu et al. In this paper I was talking about before. So the process is that once the sample is defined, we have to determine the data source for news collection. And then finally, we have to define the procedure for news selection. Then the articles we are going to select will be processed and cleaned to be treated. And then we will apply the natural language methods. As I said before, sentiments and sentiment analysis and topic analysis. Just to explain again, I said before that we are going to focus on the ESGC score reported by Thomson Reuters Index. And the score ranges from 0 to 100, depending on the frequency, the severity, and the relevance of the controversies. And then, depending on the values, we are going to talk about the rank A and the rank D on the other extreme. If you try to look for this, you can see that apart from D, we have several sub-intervals from D minus to D plus, but we are not going to detail it here because we didn't use these sub-intervals in our paper. So these are the groups we are going to work with in the paper. So the top companies, according to the ESGC score, will be in group A, so no controversies or few controversies, and the worst companies will be in group D, okay? And the second step will be to define our sample. So we apply 2 filters. The first filter was, I would like to work with large European companies according to the definition of large companies, according to the directive of the European Commission. And then the filter 2 was, once we have the large European companies, we are going to select those companies that have information on the ESG controversies index in our Refinitiv Econ, the database we can have information about, for at least 4 years during the time horizon from 2070 to 2023. So finally, after applying these two filters, our sample consists of 1,474 companies representing 27 countries and 11 sectors. We tried to establish this criteria, the information for at least 4 years, just to avoid exceptional events that may influence the data for shorter periods. So we know that our sample with this filter will be not as big as it could be in case we don't take into consideration this filter, but we think it's better to have this time horizon for all the companies. Other data we have about these companies, we didn't use all this information in our study, but we have information about the number of employees, the turnover, industry sector. So probably in the future we can use this other data just to find out other things about the companies or whatever. So once the sample of companies has been defined, we have to determine the data source. So the platform we used to extract the news, the data, was Google News, because it's quite popular and it's quite easy to access to data. The data collected in Google News is of two types, structured and unstructured data. Structured data comprises temporal data, the data of publication, data related to digital newspaper, websites, etc. Unstructured data refers to the content generated by the users or authors of the news, namely the title and a snippet or subtitle. And then the method, web scraping with Google News API, and the search query, the name of the company, and we have to define specific words related to business and ethics behavior. It has been observed that of all the types of controversies analyzed by the Econ database, these issues are the ones more frequently reported, because really, as I told before, we have 23 types of controversies, but we decide to focus on these types of controversies, mainly business ethics controversies, and you have the definition here. This is the definition coming from Thomson Reuters Econ: tax fraud controversies, and bribery, corruption, and fraud controversies. About the search query I was talking about just in the previous slide, we have to put the name of the company and specific words to detect business ethics behaviors in the sample companies. This requires a lot of time because you have to try and you think this is the right word. In this case, we don't find a lot of news. With this other word, we find more news, and you have to try and to prove a lot of queries just to get your objectives. The terms we use in our query related to the controversy measures, because really we wanted to have the information about the business ethics, but our reference was the ESG score in Econ, focus on this list of controversies I am showing now. So the terms that we were using just for the search query were business ethics, tax fraud, bribery, and corruption controversies. And the other thing I wanted to explain to you is that why did we decide to focus on ethical aspects? Because really, there are other kind of controversies. I'm going to talk about them later. I mean, pollution, governance, social issues. But really, we could see that these controversies are much more transversal and can affect any company. And on the other side, there are other controversies, such as those related to pollution, I told you just before. And we consider that it can be observed that their presence is clearly driven by the sector. I mean, it's strongly influenced by the sector. However, these kind of controversies we were working with are much more transversal. And in general, when a company is not well classified according to the ESG score, I mean, it's in rank D, or is in the group of the worst companies, usually there is an important correlation with the business ethics controversies. So finally, after our web scraping with our search query, we could find 24,315 articles from the companies I told before. And our dictionary, I will talk about this later, the words, because after our cleaning process from the articles, we will obtain our words. It's our dictionary, and from this dictionary, we will obtain a lot of information. And you can see that our major sources included Reuters, Financial Times, The Guardian, and Bloomberg. In the second figure, you can see the number of new sittings per year. As you can see there, we can perceive the exponential increase in digital content reflected in the growth of news collected. For example, in 2015, we can see that we have about 500 news, and in 2023, more than 70,500 news. So we can see an incredible increase of the news we obtain depending on the years. I'm going to explain now the second step of our methodology. Sorry, the third step is pre-processing and cleaning data. So once we have our articles, we have to prepare them just to, in the future, after some steps, to apply our two methods. So firstly, we have to review the articles just to ensure that there are not duplicate articles. We have to verify that the articles are correctly associated with the company being analyzed. Unification of information. We combine the title and the snippet of each article to create a new field called text in order to have more textual content for analysis. And then text processing with Spacy. This is a library in Python. It's a tool to work with natural language processing. In this case, as I told you before, my co-author was the one who implemented in Python this library, and she was the one who focused on the empirical parts of the paper. Okay, then what we call the second part of the paper is about text cleaning and token selection. As you know, tokenization. Tokenization means that we have to split the text into individual words or symbols. And at the same time, we have to remove stop words, punctuation, special characters, etc. And then what we call lemmatization. This means to reduce the words to their base form. For example, instead of telling running, we will put run. And what is called the part of a speech or post-staging, identifying the grammatical role of each word. And then the phase 3, what we call vocabulary trimming, we are going to remove extremely frequent words, those that are in over 25% of tests, and remove very rare words appearing in fewer than 5 texts. What about the sentiment analysis technique? So our final objective is to classify the articles as positive, negative, and neutral. So we have to start with phase 1. It's called lexicon development. So we are going to use a semantic dictionary. Use is called the Affine lexicon, based on a list of 2,400 English words. And they have what we call a balance or sentiment score. The sentiment score ranges from -5 to +5. What does it mean? The sign indicates the direction. Depending on the direction, if it's positive, it will be plus. If it's negative, it will be minus. And then the intensity. The intensity will be indicated by the number. I mean, it is very positive, it will be 5 or 4. If it's very negative, it will be -5 or -4, for example. And the other thing is that we use this Affine lexicon, but in addition, financial and ESG performance experts and analysis extended the lexicon, the Affine lexicon, with terms of specific semantics. So apart from this, we include this extension just to incorporate these terms coming from ESG. So finally, we have to calculate the total score, and the total score is calculated as the sum of all the valences assigned to the text. So this will reflect the overall sentiment of the text. So firstly, we have to use the valence or the sentiment scores for every word, and then the whole sentence will be the result of the addition of all the scores related to every word. And finally, we can visualize, I will show you later in the results, the most frequent positive, negative, and neutral terms, because with the counter, we are going to calculate the frequency, how many times appears every word, and if this word has a positive sentiment, a negative sentiment, or a neutral sentiment. And we will do several groups according to the sentiment. The second method we are going to apply is the topic modeling with the latent derivative allocation. So the idea is just to define our topics. Our topics will be defined, and we are going to apply this technique for 2 subgroups. For those companies which are the best, rank A, and for those companies which are in the worst group, rank D. In this case, the topics will be just including different words, and depending on the words, we will define the number of the topic. In some cases, it's not very easy. In other cases, it's very clear because all the terms in a topic are referring to the same thing. So, when the phase 1, dictionary and corpus creation, when we talk about a dictionary, we talk about a lot of words, and then we have to identify the words in the corpus. The corpus will be the whole text. Then we have the bank of words. In this case, it ignores the order of words and only counts how many times each word appears. So its document or its test is converted into a vector of word frequencies. what we call TF-IDF, term frequency inverse document frequency. It's a statistical technique used in text analysis to measure how important a word is in a document relative to a whole collection of documents. And then we have to train the model. The model is implemented in Python. And then we have to confer that a topic is clearly represented a concept, and the associated words really, it makes sense. I mean, these topics, it makes sense with these words. They are a whole, they reflect the same idea. Just we have to check the different topics just to know that they are really representing an idea. And then we use the Lambda measure to identify the most relevant words in each group. So I think it will be better just to show the results to understand the idea behind all this and just what we try to analyze with our methods. Do you follow me? Okay, so results. First, a general analysis. We have here, just as a first glance, the companies with the highest and the lowest number of news items collected through web scraping. So on the left side, we have those companies with the highest number of news. We mean most covered companies, and less covered companies will be the companies with the lowest number of news. As you can see, the less covered companies, all the companies we have here are in rank A. So the ESG score, controversies score, is 10, which means that they don't have any controversies, or they couldn't find any controversies related to those companies. On the other side, we can see most covered companies. And in this case, we can see that 6 out of 8 present very low ESGC, rank D, and 2 out of 8 highest ESGC, rank A. Specifically, Walters, Clover, and Spotify are at the positive strength. Based on this result, it could be assumed that the publication of both companies refer to responsibly ethical attitudes. In this case, I'm going to show the number of companies and news collected for companies in each rank. You can see that we have a lot of companies in rank A, 1,323 companies, around 90% of the total sample are in this group, and the percentage of news collected from these companies. Rank B, the number of companies, the percentage of companies over the total sample, and the correlation. I think this is a very interesting aspect to analyze, the correlation between the ESGC score and the number of news. And we can see the analysis shows a moderate negative correlation between them, between the number of news articles about a company and its ESGC score. So in figure 5, we can see that companies with fewer than 5, companies with very little news, below 50, have high ESGC scores between the range from 80 to 100, and they are falling into rank A. Companies with an ESGC score between 50 and 100 are distributed across all ranks, but mainly in rank A and rank B. And companies with more than 100 news items are concentrated in D and C. So our conclusion is, and we could observe this in our paper, a higher volume of news is associated with a worse classification, according to the ESGC rating. In this case, we have the results coming from the sentiment analysis. In this figure, we can see that 40% of the news items are positive, 38 are negative, and 23 neutral. And at the same time, you can see here the most frequent words in the news headlines of each group. The size of the words means the importance of the word in the whole group. So the top 100 words related to positive sentiments are share, tax, market, report, stock, growth, etc. The top 100 words related to negative sentiments are coward, fraud, tax, ban, etc. So we can see in our results that negative news have relation with controversies, as we have words related to ethics and fraud, and then even environment, anti-competitive issues. So we can see our search strategy was effective according to the results we found for those news with negative sentiments. In this case, I show the table in which you can see the distribution of news by sentiment for the 5 companies with the most news. And we can find interesting results. It might be expected that companies with more negative news would have a worse ESGC score. But as you can see here, the data does not confirm this relationship. We can find discrepancies between sentiment analysis based on the collection of newspapers articles and ESG results presented by companies. We are going to focus on those companies. Spotify. As you can see, Spotify, which is the percentage of negative news? We have 68% negative news coming from Spotify. We tried to find out about this company, and there were some problems with the authors, and they tried to solve the problems later, but there were a lot of bad news about this company some years ago. However, we could find that they are in the best group. They have a very high score, and they are in rank A. On the other side, if you can see Walters, in this case, Walters is in the same group, in rank A, in the group where the best companies are. However, we only find 8% of negative news. So if we compare both companies, Walters only with 8% of negative news, and Spotify 68% of negative news, and they are in the same group. So I think we have to find out this because it's a bit strange, and we can find it's an important discrepancy between our sentiment analysis and the score according to the ESGC. Other case, I would like to focus on the case of Shell. In Shell, we can find 62% of negative news. But in this case, it makes sense that it's in rank D because the percentage of negative news is very high. So as you can see, and I put here Spotify and just the following one, Shell, with the same percentage of negative news, Spotify is in rank A, however, Shell is in rank D, which makes us to think that there are some problems with the ratings. In this case, in table 4, we list the companies with the highest number of news items with positive sentiment, as well as those with the highest number of news items with negative sentiment together. And you can see there the ESGC scores. At first glance, it appears that companies with a high volume of both positive and negative news are mainly in the worst ESGC values. So this reinforces again the idea that a higher volume of information about a company does not improve its ESGC score. So again, we can see that having a lot of information about a company is going to be bad for the scores, according to the ESGC controversies scores. Only 2 companies on the left are in the best group, and 1 company, again, we have here the example of Spotify, having a lot of negative news, but is in the best group. So again, our conclusion about having a lot of news about these companies is not going to be good for the ratings. In this case, you can see the different groups ranging from A to D, according to the ESGC controversies scores. And then we have different subgroups according to the intervals of 5 points. So we have different subgroups into the big group. And the idea I would like to show you is, if you can see the negative column, there is an increase in the news coming from the companies, the news with negative sentiment. And the idea is that we can see that as the negative news increase significantly, the ESGC scores decrease, while positive and neutral news decline. So we can see that in general, as we could see some cases in which the behavior doesn't follow this link, this connection, we can see that there is a strong link between poor ESG performance and negative media sentiment. In general, we can see this relation. Although there are some cases where I think we have to study deeply what is happening, because some companies with a lot of negative news present very good scores. And then we can see that companies in rank A is the first group, around 30% of news with negative sentiment. So we have a question, no? Why does the ESGC score assign the highest rating to companies despite the presence of scandals, suggesting that such controversies are not taken into account? So it's a bit strange that we can find that companies which are in the top, the best companies, and they have an important percentage of negative news. Is it? So, I'm going to explain the topic modeling and then the conclusions. In the topic modeling, the idea is just to define some topics, and the topics are, as you can see here in table 6, we have the different words associated to every topic. The first thing is the number of topics, okay, because when you are trying to define which are the topics you are going to select, finally you have to define the number of topics. So the number of topics will be defined by what we call the coherence score. The coherence score, as you can see here in figure 7, will be defined the number of topics will be defined according to the highest value for the coherence score. In this case, we are going to choose 8 topics because the coherence score takes the highest value for 8 topics. So each topic is going to give you a group of words, and then depending on the words, you have to label the topic, okay? So in this case, we can see that instead for topic 4, which is defined as financial crimes, the rest of topics refer to objective issues. Many of the most frequent words in positive sentiment news, global, share, market, fraud, bank, tax and profit, are linked to one of the topics identified for the highest scoring companies. So we can find a link between the topics for the best companies, because we have done this analysis for companies in rank A, and those words we were checking before coming from news with positive sentiment. And then here, once labeled the topics will be grouped into higher level categories based on the distance map in this figure. And topics are represented as circles and with circle size indicating topic importance. The distance between topics is shown by the distance between the central points of each circle. So the topics we found here were advice and strategy, including topics 1, 3, and 5. Financial and task management includes topics 2, 6, and 7, and topics 4 and 8 stand alone due to distinct content and distance from others. We applied the same methodology for those companies in group in the worst group, okay, in group D. Sorry, this is D. I have B here, but this is B ranked companies. So in this case, I'm not going to detail, but because I explained the process before, but according to the number of topics, as the coherence score is higher here, we define 13 topics, we label the topics, we have here the best topic was, the percentage indicates the percentage of these topics with the representation of the topic on the whole. Okay, and then we have 2 topics with the highest rank with different connotations. And we can see that around 75% of the topics for rank D companies relate to financial and legal crimes, highlighting a strong focus on fraud, corruption, and litigation. We can see that we have some topics similar to those we were analyzing in companies in rank A, but we could see from the news, but they have different connotation and approaches. So they are considered topics coming from bad companies. And we do the same. We define our intertopic distance map. And then we could find 4 clusters according to the topics, and just to interpret the topics as 13 are a lot of topics, so we try to group them in different groups, bigger groups. Just to show this, because I want to finish, it's just about 1 hour. In this case, we try to combine both methodologies, sentiment analysis with topic modeling results. And in this figure, you can see on the right, the different topics. And then, sorry, on the left, the different topics. On the right, the sentiments. So you can see which is the percentage of positive sentiment, negative sentiment, or neutral sentiment in every topic. So just to comment, you can see that topics 1, 2, and 3 receive mostly positive news for the best companies, okay? Because we are analyzing this firstly for the best companies, the companies in group A. And for example, topics 5, 6, and 7 tend to have more positive news, but the contrast between positive and negative sentiment is not as strong. And we did the same for those companies in rank D. Again, we tried to combine both methodologies and try to find out the percentage of positive, negative, and neutral sentiment news for each topics. Just the conclusions. First, I want to sum up the main ideas of what we did in our paper. We tried to combine topic modeling and sentiment analysis just to study the ethical and unethical behavior of European companies, and try to compare textual analysis results versus ESGC scores. We could identify some inconsistencies and discrepancies between the ratings and our textual analysis. The main findings are that the companies with higher volume of news present the lower ESGC scores. I explained before, inverse correlation between them. We could find in general correlation between news sentiment and ESGC scores. And companies with high ESGC scores present in some cases negative news sentiments, which I think we have to find out what's happening here, because again, we can find some discrepancies between them. For example, the case for Spotify. The implication is that we perceive it's necessary to complement traditional ESG ratings with textual analysis. And then we try to combine approach just with different points of view and the emotional sentiment and the topics related to the different companies. And I think just to combine both approaches is very interesting, not only for investors, but only for stakeholders, company executives, etc. This is an innovative framework for assessing ethical controversies. And then we consider we can mitigate biases in order to traditional ESG scores and not to be so dependent on self-report information. And then we try to apply the 5-stage framework defined by Liu et al. To identify potential controversies. Some limitations, and I explain here how to overcome them in future research. And reliance only on digital news as the data source. We can incorporate other data sources as social media, blogs, and to include a more diverse perspective. We didn't include a sectoral analysis. We can think about conducting sector-specific studies because there are some controversies that are very linked to the sector. And then, just to examine in more depth the discrepancies we could identify in our study between textual analysis and ESG ratings.